Hello everybody, my name is Tyler Valle of Nichegamer.com, and this is Romance of the Three Kingdoms 13, developed by Koei and published by Koei Tecmo for the PlayStation 4 and PC. I'm going to state right up front that this review may come off biased due to the fact that if you knew me at all before my time at Nichegamer, you'd know that I'm a massive Three Kingdoms history buff, and even do Three Kingdoms history videos on my personal YouTube channel. Therefore, I'm going to try my hardest to avoid talking about the setting too much, instead choosing to focus on the mechanics of the game. Romance of the Three Kingdoms 13 is a strategy game that's depth and difficulty sits somewhere between Civilization and a Paradox Grand Strategy. The game can be broken down into two major parts. The first being a massive world map that expands over all the territory that the Three Kingdoms era encompassed. On this map, you'll be tasked with completing certain objectives that are given to you by your leader or ruler in order to build merit to further improve the conditions of the city that you're currently living in. These can range from simply waiting for a timer to tick away as your character goes to help improve the farmland of the city, or going out on a patrol to hunt down bandits in order to improve the fealty and raise your city's total population. There are two major styles to this feature that are determined by what your character's social rank is. If your character works under a lord, you can propose ideas or be given tasks by your leader to complete. If completed, you'll earn merit, and as your merit reaches certain milestones, you'll be promoted and will be given pleasant bonuses, such as an increased pay or higher troop count to control. If your character is a governor of a city or ruler of the land, they'll be able to give people orders or accept proposals that have been given to them by their advisors. I enjoyed the system quite a bit while I was making my way through the game. Admittedly, Romance of the Three Kingdoms 13 is the first game in the franchise that I've played, so the only other game I can compare it to is Koei's other long-running franchise, Nobunaga's Ambition. In the most recent entry to that franchise, Sphere of Influence, the way you would increase the wealth and prosperity of a city was to simply press a button every turn, and that's it. In this game, there's more depth to the process, and while it may seem like busy work, there are other reasons to make it fun, which I'll get into later. The second piece of the gameplay puzzle is combat, which is automatically fought in a world map by AI or fought personally by the player. There are two major differences between Sphere of Influence and Romance of the Three Kingdoms 13 when it comes to combat. 1. There are no longer massive battles in which up to dozens of divisions battle it out for control of an entire region, and whether or not your army is actually fighting in that fight will they get destroyed. Instead, these fights take place with all the troops that are currently actually in the combat site, while any troops that are moving towards the war zone in the overworld will eventually make their way to the fight and show up as reinforcements. While I believe this system is an improvement, it's far from perfect and sometimes can make battles last way too long as more and more troops show up to continue to fight, which can make battles last forever and your troops will eventually run out of supplies and begin to fall to attrition. The second more important combat difference is the only way for the player to actually control the combat is if his character is in the battle. You're not allowed to control your allies if your character isn't personally there. If your character's personal army is decimated during the fighting, you'll also be removed from the fighting, leaving you only the ability to pray that things turn in your favor. Combat is fought on the ground and within bows, and while it can be a ton of fun to watch your armies tear apart their enemies, it doesn't exactly have that much depth. Though again, it is still an improvement over Sphere of Influence. Instead of just having two armies duking it out in an open field until one side's leader is defeated, combat in Three Kingdoms 13 can be fought in either simple open areas or in castles in which one side is tasked to defend their walls from invaders while the other one has to break their way through to either decimate their entire enemy troops or take their main camp. And usually on the map there are several small camps that, once destroyed, will do damage to the enemy's morale, and once an enemy unit's morale hits 0, they will do significantly less damage, if any damage at all. It's really hard to tell, and their defenses will be lowered by a massive amount, allowing their opponents to deal a potentially lethal blow and wipe them out. This system is extremely important for when you're going up against opponents that have a larger fighting force than yourself. For example, there was a point where I fought off 78,000 troops with a force of only 28,000. By the time I won, I had only lost about 10,000 troops. The combat in boats is interesting but very linear in comparison and feels more like Nobunaga's combat, with just two forces charging at one another and fighting until all enemies are decimated. There's not much I can say in this regard. As I mentioned earlier, there's a reason why city building is significantly better in this over Nobunaga's, and that's due to the fact that Romance of the Three Kingdoms is a strategy game with RPG elements. Instead of just choosing a faction to play the ruler of, you instead choose an individual person and live their life, choosing to either play as a ruler who already existed, or choosing to play as someone new and working to raise them through the ranks yourself. Within the RPG RPG features of this game comes the ability to meet other characters from within the game and have them become your allies or friends. You have the ability to befriend nearly every character in the game, and as your friendship with them deepens, you can unlock special abilities that will aid you in other parts of the game, such as stat bonuses or special combat abilities. Romance of the Three Kingdoms 13's RPG elements are somewhat sandboxy, allowing the player to meet and befriend anyone that they want. Think of it as the Empire's version of a strategy game. Two other features that make the return to 13 are duels and debates, which allow the player to play a fun game of rock, paper, scissors with their enemies. While these systems may not have much depth either, I'd be lying if I say I didn't love every time they happened. Duels can be used to increase the fealty of a city if your character's out on patrol, or can be used to completely obliterate the morale of an enemy unit. Debates can be used in multiple different ways as well, whether you're attempting to convince an enemy general to betray their lord, or you're trying to convince another ruler to create an alliance. Most of these situations will come down to a debate, based on the player's intelligence. Romance of the Three Kingdoms 13 ships with two game modes, Hero Mode and Main Mode. Hero Mode is a mode where the player plays through 3 small missions, learning about the 3 men who would eventually go on to lead the Three Kingdoms. This mode is basically a more interactive tutorial mode that teaches the players the mechanics and style of the game, and I'd highly recommend that you start here before jumping into the other mode. The second mode is Main Mode, where you can select from, at the time of this recording, 6 different time periods to play. Within this mode, the player can simply live out the life of a conqueror and rule under their own accord with no interest in quest, or they can play as one of the major forces at the time and complete historical objectives to complete the scenario properly. Once again, Koei has created a fantastic strategy game that plays surprisingly well on a console. While not as immediately comfortable to play with a controller as Nobunaga's Ambition, which I own on both PC and PS4, but prefer the PS4 controls more, once you play the game for a few hours, you shouldn't have much of an issue. Plus, the player has the ability to pause time with the triangle button at any point in the game, meaning you'll never be overwhelmed if you don't know the controls. Just pause the game and look at the controller. The only other issue I actually ran into is a performance issue when there's just too many troops on the screen at once. The frame rate can stutter for a few moments, but usually will settle itself out. So neither of these issues are problems I feel will be in the PC release of the game if that's your platform of choice. As far as the review score goes, Romance of the Three Kingdoms 13 gets a 9.5 out of 10, the highest review score I have ever given. When it comes to the good, the Three Kingdoms is an awesome era, filled with some of the most incredible warriors in history, and making a strategy game about these men and women feels as epic as it should. Also, the artwork done by Hiroyuki Suehara is incredible. Suehara-san has easily become my favorite character artist in the industry, and I highly recommend checking out his non-video game artwork as well. The role-playing elements in this game may not be incredibly deep, but they are a perfect garnish for a good strategy game to make it feel more unique. And whether it's city management or city besiegement, the gameplay in Romance of the Three Kingdoms 13 is top-notch, and has cemented it as one of my favorite games in the strategy genre. The music is also incredible without being overpowering or distracting, which has been a problem in some of the other titles that come out of Koei Tecmo. Another fantastic addition to the game was Hero Mode, a fantastic in-depth tutorial mass as a journey to learn about the world of the Three Kingdoms. An extremely unique feature to this game is it comes with dual audio. However, the dual audio in this game isn't English and Japanese. Instead, it's Chinese and Japanese, and if you're going to play it, I'd highly recommend you play it in Chinese. It's fantastic. And finally, and probably most importantly, Koei has proven that strategy games do work on a console and show that more studios shouldn't fear the idea of porting to them. But of course, the game isn't perfect, so when it comes to the bad, the PS4 controls feel wonky at first, and not as clean as the Nobunaga's Ambition port. And there are slowdowns and frame rate stutters at the beginning of combat, but they tend to go away after 10 or so seconds. It's still noticeable, and it's still annoying. As I said at the beginning, I may be biased, but honestly, I love this game, even more than I thought I was going to, and as soon as I get this review up on YouTube, you can bet that I'll be right back at my PS4 fulfilling my ambitions to control all of China. So let's wrap this up. My name is Tyler Valle. Make sure you guys check out Nichegamer.com for all your gaming news, reviews, and previews, and be sure to subscribe to us here on YouTube as we strive to produce more video content for you. And finally, be sure to leave me a comment either here on YouTube or on my article letting me know what you think of the game. I'll see you all later. Y'all have a great day.